Bran Stark surfaced from the dark the way a swimmer broke through ice. Slow, disbelieving, and gasping as pain found him again. The room swam with torchlight. At first there was only the sense of weight. The weight of blankets, the weight of his own limbs that did not answer, the weight of an ache that ran from the base of his skull down into his spine like a hot iron pressed beneath skin. His mouth tasted of bitter leaves. He tried to swallow and coughed instead, and the sound was small in his throat yet loud enough to make the dire wolf lift its head. Brandon. The name was a hand gripping him, pulling him back. Bran, my sweet boy. His mother's face hovered above him, too close, as if she feared he might vanish if she looked away. Catelyn Stark had always been beautiful to him in the way of mothers. Soft hair, a voice like warm milk, hands that knew where his hurts were before he spoke. But now she looked thinned by sleeplessness, her eyes swollen. Her lips cracked as if she had been biting them to keep from crying out. He tried to speak. His tongue felt thick, clumsy. A croak came out. Maester Luwin bent near with a lamp cupped in his palms. The light made the gold in his chain wink like watchful eyes. "Easy," the Maester murmured. "Do not strain. You have been far away. Far away." Bran knew what far away meant. Far away was the broken tower, the cold wind, the stones that had rasped under his fingers when he had climbed too high and too fast, chasing glory like a cat chased a sunbeam. Far away was falling. Far away was the sky spinning and the yard rushing up to meet him. But beneath that, deeper than memory, deeper than the dark, something else moved. A whisper, not of voices in the room but of voices in the world. A rustle of leaves where no leaves grew, the taste of sap. A sound like an old tree breathing. He blinked, and the ceiling above him was no longer Winterfell's. For a heartbeat, it was the underside of a canopy, red leaves and black branches interlacing like fingers. He smelled earth. He felt roots under him, and the sense of being watched was not fear but an immense patience. Then his mother's hand brushed his cheek, and Winterfell returned. Stone, smoke, the faint scent of wolves. "Bran," Catelyn said again, as if the name anchored him. "Do you know me?" He nodded, though the motion jarred him and made his vision flare with sparks. "Mother," he rasped. Her breath hitched. She kissed his brow, and he felt tears fall warm against his skin. "The gods be thanked." Summer rose at the foot of the bed and padded closer, placing his great head on the blanket as if guarding him with sheer presence. Bran's fingers twitched, wanting to bury themselves in the thick fur, wanting to feel something respond to him. His hand did not rise. The knowledge came like a stone settling in his stomach. He could not reach. He could not move. Panic surged, sharp and sudden, but it was shoved aside by another sensation, stranger and stronger. The same whisper, the same rustle. It did not come from the wolf, came through the wolf. Bran's eyes snapped to Summer's, and for an instant he was not looking at a dire wolf from a bed. He was looking out from a wolf's skull into a torchlit room, smelling fierce sweat and grief and the bitter herbs in Maester Luwin's bowl. The world sharpened, rich with details no boy's senses could hold. Then it shattered. Bran gasped and came back into himself, heart hammering. Maester Luwin made a soft noise. He is awake, but his mind is still storm-tossed. It is the poppy, my lady, and the pain. Dreams come hard upon him. "They are not dreams," Bran whispered. His mother stilled. The maester's face remained calm, but his eyes were suddenly very alert. Bran licked his cracked lips. His throat burned. The words felt too large to fit in a child's mouth, yet they pressed at him, demanding release. He could see it again, as clear as the room. The broken tower's high window, the dust motes in sunlight, two shapes close together in secret, and then the sudden turn, gold hair, green eyes, a man's face hard with panic. "You saw?" Catelyn asked, as if afraid of the answer. Bran swallowed. "I remember." His voice shook. "I climbed. I shouldn't have. I saw Queen Cersei Lannister." The maester's lamp burned steady, but Catelyn Stark's hands tightened in the blankets. You saw the queen? And Sir Jaime Lannister, Bran said, and the name was a blade drawn in a quiet room. They were together. He did not know the words for what he had seen that day, not in the way grown people meant them. He only knew it had been wrong in a way that made the air itself feel guilty. They were holding each other, like man and wife. Catelyn's face blanched, as if she had been struck. No, she breathed, not denial so much as dread taking shape. Bran closed his eyes and wished the memory away. Clung. When he opened them again, he saw his mother's fear and knew the truth had already taken root. They saw me, he whispered. He saw me.
Sir Jaime Lannister.
He came to the window and Bran's fingers curled, useless, against the blanket. His heartbeat thudded against his ribs like fists on a door. He said the things I do for love. The words fell heavy. They made the room colder. Maester Luwin's chain shifted as he straightened. My lady, he began, careful. The boy is fevered. He is not, Bran said fiercely, and the fierceness surprised him, felt older than him, as if borrowed from something ancient and rooted. It was not fever. He pushed me. Catelyn's face twisted. She looked as if she might be sick. She put a hand over her mouth, then lowered it with effort. Jaime Lannister pushed you, she repeated, each word shaped like a stone placed in a wall. Bran nodded once, hard. Because I saw. He stopped, because the next part of it was worse, and because he had not known it with his own eyes until the dark showed it to him. The whisper came, again more insistent. In his mind, the broken tower turned into other rooms. A bedchamber with crimson hangings, a golden lion tapestry, a cradle rocked by a man's hand, blonde children laughing beneath the gaze of the queen, a black-haired king turning away, blind with trust, and in the shadows, always the same gold-haired man, smiling in the way a sword smiled when it was clean. Bran's breath caught. The images were not his memories. They were something else, spilled into him like wine into water. Catelyn leaned close. Bran, what is it? Tell me. His voice came out small. Joffrey Baratheon is not King Robert Baratheon's, he said, stumbling, because even the names felt too heavy. He is Sir Jaime Lannister's. Silence. It was a deep silence, the kind that followed the closing of a tomb. Maester Luwin's lamp trembled slightly, just enough to show he was not made of stone. Catelyn Stark did not move. Her eyes fixed on Bran's face as if searching for a lie, for confusion, for mercy. Bran, she whispered, how could you know such a thing? He wanted to say I saw, but he had not seen the making. He had seen the shape of it, the inevitability, the tangled roots beneath the visible tree. He could not explain that the world had opened inside his skull, that secrets ran through it like veins. I know, he said, and then desperately, it is true. Catelyn's hand went to his hair and stroked it the way she had when he was small and sick. Her fingers were cold. 7 save us, she said, and the words sounded like prayer and curse together. Summer lifted his head again and made a low sound, not a growl but a warning. Somewhere in the castle a door shut. Footsteps echoed. The ordinary sounds of Winterfell continued, indifferent, but Bran felt the room tighten around the truth he had spoken. It was as if he had lit a torch in a storehouse full of dry straw. Catelyn Stark turned her gaze to Maester Luwin. We send a raven, she said, her voice quiet and absolute, to my lord husband, and to the king. Maester Luwin's mouth tightened. My lady, the king is far. Ravens can be lost. Then we send 2, Catelyn said, and 3 if we must. She looked down at Bran again, and there was something in her eyes now that had not been there before. Steel cold as the gods would pool. And we keep this close. No one is to know, Bran. No one. Do you hear me? Bran wanted to nod. He wanted to promise. Instead he lay still, trapped in his own body, and felt the weight of his words spreading through the castle like smoke. He heard the whisper again, faint as leaves against stone. and somewhere beyond Winterfell a stag lifted its head, sensing the arrow already loosed. Sleep came like a thief, stealing him in spite of himself. Bran drifted, not into softness but into a sharper darkness, threaded with scent and sound. He felt the bed beneath him fade. He felt the room shrink and then vanish. He was running, for paws struck stone with a rhythm that made him want to laugh, if wolves laughed. His lungs drank cold air. The world was a tapestry of smells. Old smoke, damp wool, baked bread, iron from the armory, and under it all the familiar musk of Winterfell itself, ancient and comforting as his father's voice. Summer moved through the castle like a shadow given bones. Bran knew he was Summer, and the knowledge did not frighten him the way it should have. It felt right, as if this were the limb he had been missing. He turned a corner and saw men in gray cloaks carrying a cask, their eyes widening at the sight of the direwolf. They pressed themselves against the wall, murmuring prayers under their breath, and Summer flowed past them without care. Wolves did not fear men who smelled of fear. He came into a hall where banners hung limp in the warmth. A fire burned in a great hearth. By it stood Robb Stark, his older brother, tall for his years, his face drawn tight in worry he tried to hide. Gray Wind was with him, restless, pacing in a short circle as if his body could not hold his agitation. Robb saw Summer and reached out a hand, palm down in the cautious way, though the direwolves had never harmed them. Gray Wind's head turned, ears flattening. The two wolves looked at one another, and Bran felt a pull, a thread between them. Then he smelled her. Catelyn Stark came into the hall like a blade drawn from a sheath. Her hair was unbound, falling over her shoulders, and the sight struck Bran oddly. His mother rarely let her hair loose except in the godswood or in grief. Her face was set, her eyes shining with something hard. At her belt, beneath the folds of her gown, a dagger's hilt showed. Robb stepped toward her at once. "Mother!" Catelyn lifted a hand. "Not here." Robb's jaw clenched. "Is he awake? Is Bran?" "He is awake," Catelyn said, and the word awake carried a different meaning now. She glanced at the wolves. Her gaze lingered on Summer longer than it should have, as if she felt something in the direwolf's stare. "Send everyone away," she told Robb. "I need you alone, and Gray Wind stays with you." Robb hesitated, then snapped orders to the nearest guards. Men moved, shooing servants from the hall with brusque gestures. When the hall emptied, Catelyn drew Robb closer and spoke in a voice too low for ordinary ears. But Bran had Summer's ears. He heard every breath, every swallow. "Your father must know," Catelyn said, and Bran felt the tremor beneath her steadiness. "And the king. But this must not leave us. Not yet. Not until we can be sure." Robb's voice cracked, half boy, half lord. "What is it? Tell me." Catelyn's eyes flicked to the fire, as if seeking courage in flame. "Bran remembers," she said. "He remembers who did it." Robb's hand went to the sword he did not yet wear as a man. "Who?" Catelyn's mouth tightened. "Jaime Lannister." Robb's face went white with fury. He looked as if he might charge south alone, a boy with a wolf and a dream of justice. "I'll kill him," he breathed. "You will do nothing of the sort," Catelyn snapped, and the sharpness of it made Summer's hackles rise. "Not yet. Listen to me." Bran saw more. He spoke more. Robb stared. "More than being pushed?" Catelyn's voice softened, but only slightly. "He says Joffrey is not the king's son." The words hung between them. Robb blinked as if he had not understood. "What?" Catelyn swallowed. "He says the queen's children are Jaime's." Robb's face shifted as the meaning sank claws into him. That's treason." "Yes," Catelyn said, and in Summer's nose the scent of her fear sharpened, edged with resolve. "And treason has already tried to murder my son." Robb's voice came hard. "We should call the banners, and tell the Lannisters what we know before the king has even heard it?" Catelyn's eyes flashed. "No. We do this with ravens, with ink, with care. Your father is hand of the king. He will know what to do." Robb looked as if the words burned him. "And if they kill him?" Catelyn flinched, just for a heartbeat. Then she steadied. "Then we will have done what we can," she said. "But we will not give them cause to strike first." Robb's gaze went to Summer again. "How does Bran know?" "He's only—" "I do not know," Catelyn admitted, and Bran felt a strange grief at the honesty. "But I believe him." Summer's body turned without Bran's intention, padding closer to the stair that led up toward Bran's chamber. It was as if the wolf wanted to return, to guard the boy who lay helpless in bed. As Summer moved, a door at the far end of the hall opened. A man stepped out. A guard, one of Winterfell's own, his cheeks red from the cold. He saw the wolves and froze. His eyes flicked to Catelyn and Robb, and then away, as if he had stumbled into something he should not witness. Catelyn's gaze followed his. Her voice became steel again. "Close that door," she said. The guard obeyed at once, but Bran felt the way the man sent changed. Curiosity, unease. Secrets were already leaking, not in words but in the way a castle breathed differently when danger slept inside it. Summer climbed the stair, each step a silent vow, and Bran felt his own helpless body far away, like a memory of pain. In the dark behind his wolf eyes, the whisper stirred again. Not a voice, not a thought. A sense of roots reaching, of branches bending under the weight of snow. Somewhere, far to the south, a lion lifted its head. When Bran woke again, he was himself, and it was worse. His legs were still dead weight beneath the blankets. His arms were heavy, his fingers sluggish. The world came to him in muffled layers, as if he lay behind thick glass while life carried on outside it. He heard murmurs and footsteps, the occasional clank of armor, the soft growl of Summer in the corner. He smelled broth and herbs. He tasted bitterness when Maester Luwin pressed a spoon to his lips. He ate because his mother begged him to, because the Maester told him he must, because he feared drifting away again. Each swallow felt like dragging a stone uphill. Catelyn did not leave him. She sat at his bedside in a chair that seemed too small for her tension, her hands always busy, smoothing blankets, tucking hair, wiping sweat, touching his cheek as if to make sure he was real. When she looked at him, Bran felt as if she were looking at the edge of a cliff. "Mother," he whispered once, when Maester Luwin stepped out and the room was quiet but for the fire. "Will they kill us?" Catelyn's fingers paused in his hair. For a moment her face went distant, as if she saw the answer written on the stones. Then she bent close and kissed his temple. "Not if I can stop it," she said. "But you can't stop it," Bran said, because the whisper had shown him a world where men died like flies in winter, where crowns were made of blood and melted in the heat of war. Catelyn's jaw tightened. "Then we will be ready," she said, and there was steel in the softness. "Your father always said Winterfell endures." Bran wanted to believe that, but Winterfell was stone, and stone could crack. When the time came to send the ravens, Catelyn finally left his bedside, but only after making Robb swear to keep Grey Wind near Bran's door and after posting guards she trusted in the corridor. Summer remained at the foot of Bran's bed, a gray heap of fur and teeth and quiet watchfulness. Bran lay and listened to the castle. Winterfell had its own voice, a constant low murmur of life, fires crackling, people moving, dogs barking, the distant ring of steel. Now there was something else threaded through it, restraint. Orders given softly, doors closed gently, voices lowered when they passed Bran's chamber. The castle had drawn a breath and was holding it. He drifted again, not into sleep but into that other place that pressed at his mind. He saw the ravens before he heard them, saw the black wings beating against cold air, saw parchment tied to a leg with a strip of red cloth. He saw the words too, though he had not written them. He saw his mother's careful script, each letter shaped like a shield. He saw Maester Luwin's seal pressed into wax. He saw the dire wolf of Stark biting into the paper like a warning. Then the vision shifted, and he saw hands that were not his mother's. Hands rough and scarred, hands in brown wool, fingers with dirt beneath nails, reaching up to snatch a raven from the air as it landed on a perch. At a lonely tower, he saw the bird struggle. He saw a knife flash. He smelled blood. Bran jerked awake with a gasp. Summer's head lifted. The direwolf's ears pricked. No one was in the room but Bran and the wolf and the fire. Bran's heart hammered. He stared at the ceiling and tried to force his breath slow. "It's going to happen," he whispered to Summer, as if the wolf could understand the words. "They'll try. They'll stop it." Summer rose and padded to the door, placing his body against it like a living bar. Footsteps came in the corridor. Bran heard them through stone and instinct both. Measured, light. A servant? A guard? The steps paused outside his door, and Bran's stomach tightened. A voice spoke softly. "My lady said no one is to enter." Another voice, rougher. "I bring fresh water." The first voice did not yield. "Leave it there." There was a pause, then the sound of a bucket set down. The steps retreated. Bran's breath eased, but only a little. He was a boy in a bed, and the world had become a board where grown men moved pieces. Hours later, Catelyn returned, her face pale and composed. Behind her came Robb and Maester Luwin, and two guards who looked as though they had been told to expect wolves in the dark. "The ravens are gone," Catelyn said quietly, sitting again at Bran's side. She took his hand and held it as if warmth could pass between them. "One to your father, one to the king, one to Stannis Baratheon in case." She stopped herself, as if the word death tasted too bitter to speak aloud. Robb leaned over Bran's bed. His eyes were bright, his face taut. "We will hold," he promised, as if promising a fortress that it would not fall. Maester Luwin looked between them, his expression calm but strained. "Now we wait," he said, and the way he said it made waiting sound like a kind of war. Bran wanted to tell them about the hands and the knife. He wanted to scream that ravens could die too, but when he opened his mouth, he did not know which raven would be caught, which would slip through, which would arrive with truth intact. He could only say, "Be careful," and hear how small it sounded. Catelyn's grip tightened. "We will," she said, and the words were a vow to the gods and to herself. In the ravenry above, black wings beat against the winter air, carrying treason south on the back of the wind. The castle slept the way wolves slept, never fully, always listening. Bran lay awake in the dark, his mind too crowded for rest. Every creak of timber, every distant footstep, every soft hiss of the fire made his body tense, as if he could spring up and run when he could not even wiggle his toes. Summer dozed near the bed, one ear always angled toward the door. His mother had finally allowed herself a few hours' rest, but she did not go far. Bran knew her. She would be in the solar beyond the corridor, or on a pallet in his chamber, close enough to hear him breathe. Grief had made her a watcher. Bran stared at the ceiling, counting heartbeats. In his head the whisper stirred, showing him fragments like shards of glass. A man with a red cloak and a mailed fist. A boy with a crown sneering in torchlight. A stag's antlers slick with blood. He tried to force the images away. They came anyway. At some point the fire sank lower. Shadows thickened at the edges of the room. The air grew colder. Then, softly, came the sound of wood shifting, not with the castle's ordinary settling, but with intention. Faint scrape, the door barely moving on its hinges. Summer's head lifted in an instant. The wolf did not growl. He simply rose, silent as a thought, and placed himself between Bran's bed and the darkness beyond the door. Bran's throat went dry. The door eased open, no more than a hand's width. A shape slid through. A man in rough cloth, hood up, face hidden. He moved with the careful speed of someone used to stealing. In his hand a knife caught the fire's last glow, a thin line of light. Bran tried to shout. No sound came out, only a rasp of breath. Summer made a sound then, low and deep, a warning that vibrated in Bran's bones. The hooded man froze. For a heartbeat the room held its breath. Then the man lunged, not at the wolf, but toward the bed, toward Bran's helpless body, the knife raised. Summer moved. The dire wolf sprang with a force Bran felt in his own chest. Teeth flashed. The wolf struck the man's arm, jaws closing on cloth and flesh. The knife clattered to the stone floor. The man screamed, the sound raw and high, and the scream was like a bell in the night. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. A shout, the scrape of a chair. Catelyn's voice, sharp with terror. "Bran!" The hooded man fought wildly, punching at Summer's head, trying to wrench free. Summer snarled and snapped again, and the man's blood spattered dark against the floor. Bran saw it glisten in firelight like spilled ink. The door burst open. Catelyn Stark rushed in, hair loose, a hearth poker in her hands as if it were a spear. Behind her came guards, half-armored, eyes wide at the sight of the wolf locked on a struggling man. Catelyn did not hesitate. She swung the poker hard. It struck the attacker's shoulder with a crack that made Bran flinch. The man howled. Summer's jaws tightened, and the attacker sagged. "Hold him," Catelyn shouted, and the guards surged forward. One guard grabbed the man's legs. Another seized his arms. Summer released and backed away, hackles raised, lips peeled back from teeth stained with blood. The attacker writhed, but he was already broken by fear and pain. Catelyn stood over him, panting, the poker raised again. Her eyes blazed. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The man spat blood and tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "No one," he rasped. Catelyn's face twisted. She lifted the poker. "Mother?" Bran croaked, finally finding his voice, thin as thread. "Don't." Catelyn's eyes flicked to him, and for a moment the fury cracked, revealing grief underneath. Then it hardened again. "Who sent you?" she repeated, her voice like winter. The man's gaze darted, wild. "I was paid," he blurted. "Paid to do it." "By whom?" Robb's voice cut in from the doorway. He had arrived with gray wind and more guards, his sword in his hand, though he held it like a boy playing at war. His face was pale with rage, the attacker's eyes fixed on Summer, as if the wolf were the true judge here. "I don't know," he said, shaking. A man in a cloak. He said the boy mustn't wake. He said, his voice broke. He said it was for the realm. For the realm, Catelyn repeated softly, and the words were bitter as poison. Robb's voice came hard. "Then father must learn quickly," he said. Catelyn nodded. "And the king," she said, her voice low. "Before the lion can close its jaws." Bran lay beneath their words and felt the whisper stir again, like leaves in a wind that had not yet reached the castle. He had spoken the truth, and the truth had answered with steel. The Red Keep did not sleep either. It only pretended. Cersei Lannister stood with a goblet untouched in her hand, staring out at King's Landing's lights as if the city were a sea and she were counting ships. Beyond the window, the streets crawled with lanterns. The black water of the river shone like oil. Somewhere far below, laughter drifted up, unaware. Jaime Lannister lounged against the carved stone, casual as a man in his own hall. Gold hair spilled over his collar. His smile was a weapon he did not bother to sheath. "You're wearing a hole in the floor with your pacing," he said. Cersei did not look at him. "You feel it," she said instead. "Don't pretend you don't." Jaime's smile faded a fraction. He watched her a moment, and the way he watched held something too intimate for any brother. "If you mean the king," he said, "he's louder than a war drum. He always has been. This is different." Cersei's fingers tightened on the goblet. "Robert Baratheon has been loud for years and blind for longer. He is blind to what he wishes not to see. But today," she set the goblet down with careful control. "Today he looked at Joffrey as if he were a stranger." Jaime's eyes sharpened. "Did he say anything?" "He asked where the boy had learned to sneer," Cersei said, voice flat. "As if he had not watched him do it since he could walk. As if something has shifted." She turned at last, and her gaze pinned Jaime. "Someone has spoken." Jaime's jaw tightened. "The boy," he said. "The boy," Cersei confirmed. "Bran Stark." If he woke and spoke. He was not supposed to wake, Jaime said, and the words came like an oath broken. Cersei laughed, but there was no humor in it. We do not get what we are supposed to get, she said. We take it, and we keep it. She stepped closer to Jaime, lowering her voice. If the boy has spoken, the Starks may have sent ravens. Jaime's gaze went to the door, as if he could see through it to the castle beyond. Ravens are easily lost, he said. Yes, Cersei said softly. Lost, delayed, misunderstood. All sorts of things can happen to small black birds in a world full of hawks. A faint rustle came from the Solar's entrance. The guards opened the door without announcing, because the man who slipped in did not require announcement. Varys moved like a whisper given flesh, silk robes gliding, soft slippers making no sound. He bowed low, smiling with practiced warmth. Your Grace, he said to Cersei.
Ser Jaime.
Forgive the intrusion. I bring tidings. Cersei's eyes narrowed. From where? From the north, Varys said, the smile never leaving. Winterfell, to be precise. Jaime's hand drifted toward his sword belt, though he did not touch it. Speak. Varys spread his hands, palms up, as if empty. A raven flew this morning, he said. Or rather, ravens. Several. His eyes flicked to Cersei, delicate as a needle. The message is not yet known to me, of course. Ravens are secretive creatures. Cersei's face remained composed, but Jaime saw the tension in her shoulders. If it is secret to you, she said, why tell me? Because secrets have a way of becoming unpleasant surprises, Varys replied gently. And surprises are so often deadly. He hesitated like a man choosing words carefully. My little birds in the rookery whispered that one raven was addressed to King Robert Baratheon directly. Cersei's breath went shallow. One raven, she repeated, forcing calm. And another, Varys added, to Lord Eddard Stark. And a third, it seems, to Dragonstone. Jaime's face hardened. Stannis Baratheon. Varys inclined his head. So it appears. For a heartbeat, Cersei saw herself on a precipice. She heard the crack of ice beneath her feet. She heard Robert's laughter turn to rage. She saw Stannis's cold eyes, the kind that never forgave. She stepped closer to Varys until her perfume filled the space between them. What do you want? She asked quietly. Varys's smile grew mournful. Only the realm's peace, he said, and his tone suggested he believed it. The realm's peace, Cersei echoed, and her eyes were knives. You mean your own? Varys spread his hands again. Peace is good for everyone, he murmured. War is so messy, and kings can be unpredictable when they feel betrayed. Jaime's voice came low. If you know so much, you know what happens if it comes out. Varys's eyes went to Jaime's face, and for a moment the spymaster's mask slipped, showing something like pity. Oh, Sire, he said softly. I know. Cersei drew back, her mind moving quickly. Ravens can be caught, she said, not to Varys but to herself. Intercepted before they reach the king. Varys's smile returned, small and pleasant. They can, he agreed, as if discussing weather. Though sometimes ravens reach their roost even when storms try to blow them off course. Cersei's gaze snapped to him. Are you warning me? She demanded. Or threatening me? Varys bowed his head. Neither, he said. I am merely informing, so that you may prepare. His eyes lifted. After all, your grace, you have children. The word children was a blade. Cut because it was true. Cut because it was leverage. Cersei's hand clenched. Leave us, she said. Varys bowed once more and slipped out as silently as he had come, leaving behind the scent of roses and rot that always seemed to cling to him. Jaime looked at Cersei. What now? He asked, and for once his bravado was thin. Cersei's eyes glittered in candlelight. Now, she said, we make sure the king never reads what the wolves have written. She moved to a table covered with letters and maps. Send men to the road, quiet men. Men who know how to lose a bird. And if the bird cannot be lost. She stopped, then forced the words out. Then we lose the hand that wrote it. Jaime's mouth tightened. Eddard Stark is hand of the king. And the king can die, Cersei said softly, and her voice was colder than the stone walls. Men diefe. Every day, Jaime. Even kings. Especially kings who do not know when to stop hunting. She turned to him, and the look she gave him was not sisterly. We move first. We always move first. Outside the solar, the Red Keep's corridors breathed and watched. Somewhere in the rookery, ravens shuffled, croaking secrets to one another, unaware that lions had set hawks loose in the sky. The raven's wings beat hard against the wind, carrying the weight of Winterfell on sinew and instinct. It flew low at first, dodging the worst of the weather, then climbed when the land rose and the air thinned. Beneath it, the kingsroad stretched like a scar through the realm, brown and muddy, bordered by leafless trees and frozen ditches. At a lonely stone waystation tower, the raven dipped, circling once, then dropped toward the rookery ledge where it had landed countless times before. The Raven Keeper, a thin man with a cough that lived in his chest, heard the familiar wings and smiled, because ravens meant news and news meant coins. He reached up, murmuring nonsense sounds meant to soothe birds. The raven hopped closer, head cocked, black eyes bright. Its leg bore a small strip of cloth. The Raven Keeper's fingers brushed it. Hoofbeats thundered up the slope. The raven snapped its wings, startled. The keeper jerked his hand back. 3 riders burst into view, cloaks flapping, horses steaming as if they had ridden hard through hell. They reined in with practiced harshness. Mud splattered the tower's stones. The Raven Keeper blinked, startled by such urgency in a place that rarely saw more than merchants and weary travelers. "Lords," he croaked, "if you've come for shelter, I've—" One rider slid down from his horse. He was not a lord. He moved too quietly, too efficiently. His cloak was brown, his boots worn, his face half hidden beneath a hood. When he stepped closer, the Raven Keeper smelled him. Sweat, horse, and something sharper. Fear held in check. "We came for the bird," the man said. The Raven Keeper's mouth went dry. "The what bird?" The second rider, heavier, leaned forward in his saddle and flicked a silver coin between his fingers. It flashed in the weak light. "The bird," he said again, impatient. "Hand it over." The Raven Keeper's eyes darted to the raven, which had hopped back along the ledge, watching. "It's for the king's roost," he said, suddenly wary. "Or the hands." "I don't open." The first rider's hand moved. A short knife appeared as if it had grown there, the blade dull in color, made to not shine. "You will," he said quietly. The Raven Keeper's cough turned into a choking sound. "That's—" he began, and then he saw the third rider, who had dismounted and was walking behind him toward the tower's door, cutting off escape without needing to say it. The Raven Keeper's hands trembled. He had lived long enough to know when coins were not payment but distraction. He glanced at the raven again. The bird cocked its head, as if curious about the new game. "I," the keeper whispered. The first rider stepped closer, knife angled. Not quite a threat yet, but a promise. "Do it," he said. The Raven Keeper reached, fingers shaking. The raven hopped away. He tried again, murmuring. The raven's claws scraped stone. Its wings flicked. The rider with the knife moved faster than any Raven Keeper. He surged forward and grabbed the bird I'd hop, his hand closing like a trap. The raven shrieked and beat its wings, but his grip was iron. He yanked at the strip of cloth tied around its leg. The Raven Keeper's face went gray. "Please," he rasped. "Don't." The knife rider looked at him, expression blank. Then, without hesitation, he snapped the raven's neck with a twist of his wrist. The sound was small. It was the kind of sound that could be missed if the wind were louder. The Raven Keeper made a moaning noise, as if the breaking of a bird's neck had broken something inside him. "Why?" he whispered, not because he expected an answer, but because the question needed to exist. The Knife Rider unrolled the parchment. His eyes scanned it quickly. The letters were neat, careful. The wax seal bore a direwolf. His face did not change, but his jaw tightened. He folded the parchment again and stuffed it into his cloak. The heavy rider tossed the silver coin toward the Ravenkeeper. It struck the stone at his feet and rolled. "For your trouble," he said. The Ravenkeeper stared at the coin as if it were filth. "That raven was sworn," he whispered. The Knife Rider stepped closer to him. "So were you," he said, and his tone carried a quiet cruelty. "You saw nothing. You heard nothing. If anyone asks, you caught nothing but a cold." The Ravenkeeper swallowed, his throat bobbing. "And if I don't?" The Knife Rider's eyes were flat. "Then you'll be another dead thing in the tower," he said. "And your bones won't be the first." For a heartbeat, the Ravenkeeper saw his own death, quick and unremarked. His blood soaking into stone the way a bird's blood had. He nodded because he wanted to live. The riders mounted again. They turned their horses and thundered back down the slope, leaving behind churned mud and a dead raven. The Ravenkeeper sank to his knees. He picked up the silver coin with shaking fingers and felt nothing but cold metal. In the sky above, other ravens flew. The realm was full of black wings. But one truth lay crumpled in a cloak now, headed toward a lion's den. And in Winterfell, far away, Bran Stark's dreams shivered. The next day brought a message without words. A rider arrived at Winterfell's gates with a face pinched by cold and fear. He carried no letter, no seal, no raven. What he carried was a small bundle wrapped in cloth, tied with twine. He insisted on seeing Lady Catelyn Stark at once. Catelyn met him in the great hall, beneath the direwolf banners and the gaze of stone kings. Robb stood beside her, stiff-backed, trying to look older than he was. Grey Wind sat at his heel, eyes fixed on the rider. Summer lay near the steps to the dais, head on paws, but his gaze never blinked. The rider bowed too deeply, too quickly. "My lady," he said, voice hoarse. "From the waystation tower on the kingsroad. The Ravenkeeper, he sent this." Catelyn's fingers curled. "Show me." The rider held out the bundle with both hands as if it were sacred. Catelyn took it and the cloth was damp. She untied the twine and unfolded the fabric. Inside lay a single black feather, snapped in half. Alongside it was a strip of red cloth, Winterfell's marker, torn and stained dark. No blood remained wet, but enough had been there once. Catelyn's face tightened. Her eyes lifted to Maester Luwin, who had stepped forward at her gesture. The Maester took the bundle, examined the feather, the cloth, the stain. His mouth tightened with horror. "A raven was taken," he said quietly. Robb's hand went to his sword. "They killed it," he said, voice hard. Catelyn felt a cold rage spread through her like ink in water. "Which raven?" she asked the rider. The rider swallowed. "The one addressed to King Robert Baratheon," he said. "The Ravenkeeper said 3 riders came, my lady. He didn't dare fight them. He is frightened. He said he saw a seal with a direwolf. He thought the message important. He sent me instead." Catelyn closed her eyes for a heartbeat. The king's raven, gone, snuffed out like a candle. "Did you see the parchment?" Robb demanded. The rider shook his head quickly. "No, Lord. The riders took it. The Ravenkeeper, he said they opened it." Catelyn's stomach tightened. "Then they know," she murmured. Maester Luwin's voice was careful. "They suspected already. Now they have confirmation that the Starks are moving." Catelyn opened her eyes. In them was a clarity sharpened by threat. "The second raven," she said. "The one to Eddard Stark. Did it fly?" Maester Luwin nodded. "It did, my lady." "And the third to Stannis Baratheon." Catelyn turned to Robb. "We assume the king will not receive our warning," she said. "We assume the queen will move against your father before he can move against her. We assume the worst." Robb's jaw clenched. "Then we send men," he said. "Fast riders, not ravens. A message from your mouth, not ink they can steal." "Yes," Catelyn said, and the decision was immediate. Send Ser Roderick Castle with a strong escort to King's Landing. Tell him to ride hard and sleep in the saddle if he must." Maester Luwin frowned. "My lady, the road is long, and Jairus. So is waiting," Catelyn snapped, then softened slightly as she forced herself to breathe. She looked up at the stone kings above the dais, their faces carved in stern stillness. "Winterfell has been safe for too long," she said. "We forgot the world beyond our walls." Robb's eyes burned. "If they touch father," Catelyn cut him off. "You will not speak of vengeance before we know the shape of the battlefield," she said. "Your father is a wolf in the south. He will not go quietly. But he is surrounded by lions." Her gaze drifted to the wolves on the floor. Summer's ears angled forward, attentive. Grey Wind's tail flicked once, restless. "Post men on every door," Catelyn ordered. "No strangers in the yard. Question every servant who comes near Bran's chamber. And keep the direwolves close." Maester Luwin hesitated. "My lady, the direwolves frighten people." "Some may. Let them be frightened," Catelyn said, and her voice was cold enough to freeze breath. "Better they fear our wolves than welcome the lion's knives." The rider shifted uneasily, still on his knees. Catelyn looked down at him. "You did well," she said. "You will be rewarded, and you will speak of this to no one outside these walls. If the Lannisters learn we know the raven was killed, they will know another message flew." The rider nodded rapidly. "Aye, my lady, I swear." Robb turned away, pacing like a caged wolf. "We should have called the banners," he muttered. Catelyn watched him, and the ache of motherhood cut through her iron. "Soon," she said quietly. "Soon, if the king does not act. But if we call the banners too early, we become rebels. We become traitors, not witnesses." Robb spun back. "Witnesses to what? They murdered Bran. They murdered that raven. They'll murder father too." Catelyn stepped close and took Robb's face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me," she said. "We will not be the ones to break the realm. The realm is already cracked. We will not give the lion the excuse to claim we started the fire." Robb's breath came hard, but he nodded, the fury still there, but shaped now by discipline. Catelyn released him and looked toward the corridor that led to Bran's chamber. The truth sat there, helpless in a bed, and yet it had already drawn blood. "Hold," she whispered, not to Robb, not to Maester Luwin, but to Winterfell itself. "Hold." Far south, under warmer skies, the second raven beat its wings harder, flying toward a city where stone smelled of salt and rot and crowns. Eddard Stark had learned to read men's faces the way he read weather. There were storms that announced themselves with thunder, and storms that came in silence, changing the air before anyone noticed. When the raven arrived, it did not announce itself with thunder. It arrived in the rookery and was carried to him by a breathless boy with ink-stained fingers. The boy bowed, stammered, and held out the parchment as if it were a blade. The seal was gray wax with a direwolf pressed into it. Ned broke it with a thumbnail. He read once, then again, slower, his jaw tightening with each line. By the time he reached the end, the words had sunk into him like cold water. "Bran remembers. Jaime Lannister pushed him. Bran says Joffrey is not Robert's." Ned's hand closed around the parchment. For a moment he was back in Winterfell, hearing his son laugh as he climbed, feeling pride and annoyance and love all at once. He saw the broken tower. He saw Bran's small body falling like a bird struck from the sky. He saw the lion's grin. He forced himself to breathe. Rage was easy. Rage would get him killed. He looked up as the door opened. Robert Baratheon entered with the scent of outdoors clinging to him. Sweat, leather, cold air. He wore hunting leathers as if he had dressed for sport rather than rule. A boar spear was in his hand, because Robert always liked to carry something that made him feel alive. His beard was unkempt. His eyes were bright with restless energy. "Ned!" he boomed, and the room seemed smaller beneath his voice. "You've been hiding in here like a septon. Come drink with me." There's a hunt tomorrow and I want you with me. Gods. I miss the taste of blood in the air. Behind him, Barristan Selmy in his white cloak stood like a shadow made of honor. The old knight's face was calm, but his eyes missed nothing. Ned did not smile. We need to speak, he said. Robert paused mid-step. The change in Ned's tone cut through his good cheer like a blade. About what? Robert demanded, though the laugh had already started dying on his tongue. Ned held up the parchment. Winterfell, he said. Robert's brows lifted. News of the boy? Is he? He woke, Ned said, and Robert's face softened for a heartbeat. But that is not all. He remembers. Robert's smile faltered. Remembers what? Ned's throat tightened. This was the moment where worlds shifted. He thought of his oath to Robert. He thought of the realm. He thought of the children in Cersei's care. Children who were still children no matter who had sired them. He thought of his own children, far away, endangered by this knowledge. He looked at Robert Baratheon, who had been his brother in all but blood, who had laughed beside him and bled beside him, who had worn a crown like a drunk wore a cloak. Robert's eyes were sharp now, suspicious. Out with it, Robert snapped. You have the look of a man bringing me a corpse. Ned took a breath. Bran Stark saw Queen Cersei Lannister in the Broken Tower. Are at Winterfell, he said, with Ser Jaime Lannister, together, in secret. Robert stared. For a moment he did not understand. Then the understanding hit him, and his face darkened as if a shadow had passed over the sun. Together, he repeated slowly.
Ned nodded.
Ser Jaime Lannister pushed him, he said, to keep him quiet. Robert's grip tightened on his spear. The wood creaked. That, he began, voice thick with rage. That golden prick. Robert, Ned said sharply, because if Robert roared now, the walls would hear. There is more. Robert's eyes snapped to him. More, he said, as if daring the world to give him more. Ned held the parchment out, as if making Robert take the weight himself. Bran says Prince Joffrey Baratheon is not your son, Ned said, and his voice was steady only because it had to be. He says the Queen's children are Jaime's. The room went very still. Robert's face did not contort with rage at first. It went blank. For a heartbeat Ned saw nothing behind his eyes, as if Robert's mind had gone somewhere far away, somewhere it did not want to return from. Then Robert's laughter came. One harsh bark. Not joy but disbelief. That's a lie, he said. That's a bloody northern fever dream. A child's tale. It is not only Bran, Ned said, and he chose his words with care. Jon Arryn. Robert's eyes flared. Do not speak Jon Arryn's name to me in the same breath as this filth. Ned met his gaze without flinching. Jon Arryn died for this, he said quietly. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Barristan Selmy shifted slightly by the door, as if readying himself for a blow that might come from any direction. Robert's voice came low and dangerous. How could a child know such a thing? He demanded. How could Bran Stark? Ned's stomach turned. He saw the Queen and Jaime together, he said, and he has spoken of things he should not know. My lady wife believes him. She sent ravens to you and to Stannis Baratheon as well. Robert's head snapped up. Stannis, he said, and the name was a stone in his mouth. Of course she did. His eyes narrowed. And you believe this too? Ned did not answer with words. He stepped to a shelf and pulled down a book he had begun to study at Jon Arryn's urging, Lineages and Histories of the Great Houses. He opened it to a page marked with a ribbon. The Baratheon seed is strong, he said, and his voice carried the weight of a dead man's suspicion. Black of hair, blue of eye, always. He thought of Gendry's face, the stubborn jaw that might as well have been Robert's own. Your bastards look more like you than your trueborn son does. Robert's breathing changed. It became heavier, as if he were trying to haul air through anger. Ned watched Robert's hands. Robert's fingers were thick and scarred, made for war, not for delicate truth. They tightened on the spear again until his knuckles went white. Finally Robert spoke, and his voice was no longer loud. It was a rasp, lick, a wounded animal. "If this is true," he said, "then I have been a fool." Ned said nothing because there was no comfort in it. Robert's eyes lifted, and the pain in them was naked. "I loved her once," he said, and the confession sounded like betrayal of himself. "God's help me, I did. I thought..." His mouth twisted. "I thought I could grow to love the rest. I thought..." He broke off, and the break was like a bone snapping. Then the anger returned, brighter, hotter, because anger was easier than hurt. Robert slammed the butt of his spear against the floor. "Bring her," he growled. "Bring Cersei to me. Now." Ned stepped forward quickly. "Not yet," he said. "If she knows you know, she will strike. Quietly. With poison, with knives, with..." "With what?" Robert snapped. "With her brother's cock?" The words were crude, but the grief beneath them was raw. Barristan Selmy spoke for the first time, voice calm as steel. "Your Grace," he said, "Lord Eddard Stark is wise to counsel caution. A cornered lioness is dangerous." Robert's eyes flicked to Barristan. For a moment Ned saw Robert weigh the old knight's loyalty like a sword. Then Robert's jaw clenched. He looked back to Ned. "What do you propose?" he demanded. Ned forced himself to think past rage. "We confirm," he said. "We bring Stannis Baratheon here. We gather what Jon Arryn gathered. We move with the law, not with my fist," Robert snarled. "With the realm behind you," Ned said, because that was the only shield that mattered. "If you strike without proof, you give Lord Tywin Lannister excuse to call you mad. If you move with proof, you take the Lannisters' legs out from under them." Robert's nostrils flared. He stared at the book, at the parchment, at the ugly shape of the truth. Finally he spoke, voice thick. "No hunt," he said abruptly.
Ned blinked.
"What?" Robert turned toward the door. "No hunt tomorrow," he barked.
No bloody boar. No drunken folly.
"I stay in the castle." His eyes cut toward Barristan. "Double the Kingsguard at my door. No one comes near my wine, my food, my..." He paused, and his gaze went distant, thinking of children. "My sons," he said, and the word was strange on his tongue now. Ned's heart tightened. Robert had loved those children in his own way, even if he had not known how to be gentle. To have that love poisoned would break him. Robert spun back, face set. "Send for Stannis," he ordered. "Now, and Varys, and Pycelle, and..." His mouth twisted. "And the gods help me, Littlefinger too. If half the court knows, I want to know which half." Ned bowed his head. "As you command." Robert's eyes burned. "And Ned," he said, voice low, "if this is true..." His hand tightened on the spear again. "Then I will kill them." Ned held his gaze. "Then do it with the realm watching," he said softly, "or the realm will bleed for it." Robert's lips peeled back in something that was not a smile. "The realm is going to bleed," he said, "one way or another." Outside Isolar, King's Landing's noise continued, ignorant. Inside, the king's laughter had died, and in its place stood something older and colder, a war king remembering what he was. Cersei knew before anyone told her. It was in the way the guards stood, more of them closer together, hands nearer hilts. It was in the way servants moved with their eyes down, as if afraid of catching blame by looking up. It was in the way doors that were usually open now lingered half shut, as if the castle itself were reluctant to reveal its throat. She walked through the gallery with her children at her side, and every step felt measured. Joffrey Baratheon strode ahead as if the Red Keep belonged to him already. He wore crimson and gold, his hair bright as a flame in torchlight. His chin was high, his mouth curled with habitual disdain. Sandor Clegane followed him, silent and looming, the hound's burned face half hidden beneath a dark helm. Myrcella Baratheon stayed close to Cersei's hip, fingers slipping into her mother's hand. Tommen Baratheon trailed on the other side, rubbing sleep from his eyes, confused by the tension he did not understand. Cersei's fingers tightened around Myrcella's. "Stay close," she murmured. Joffrey turned his head. "Why are there so many guards?" he demanded, voice sharp. "Where are they going?" "I want to go to the yard." "You will do as you are told," Cersei said, her tone clipped. Joffrey's eyes flashed. "I am the prince," he snapped, and the way he said prince made it sound like king. Cersei swallowed her irritation. "And I am the queen," she said softly, a warning disguised as a reminder. "You will not be out of my sight today." Joffrey scoffed, but he slowed, because even he could sense something. The Red Keep was a beast, and beasts went quiet when they smelled blood. As they neared the throne room doors, Cersei saw him, Ser Barristan Selmy, white cloak bright against the stone. He stood rigid, eyes forward, but when Cersei approached, his gaze flicked to her for a heartbeat, and the look held no warmth, no obedience, only judgment. Cersei's smile was polished and cold. "Ser Barristan," she said, "you are very vigilant today." "The king commanded it," Barristan replied, voice calm. "The king commands many things," Cersei said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "He also commanded a hunt tomorrow, yet I hear it is cancelled." Barristan's expression did not change. "His Grace chose otherwise," he said. Cersei felt the noose tighten a fraction. Robert had never cancelled a hunt unless sick or enraged. If he had cancelled it, it meant he feared leaving the castle or feared what might happen if he did. She forced her face to remain composed. "How cautious of him," she said. Barristan did not answer. He did not need to. Joffrey, impatient, pushed forward. "Let me in," he demanded of the guards at the doors. The guards hesitated. One looked to Barristan. Barristan's voice remained calm. "No one enters," he said. "The king is in council." Joffrey's face reddened. "I am no one," he snarled. Cersei stepped forward quickly, placing a hand on Joffrey's shoulder, squeezing just enough to remind him she could hurt him too. "We will return later," she said smoothly. She turned her gaze on Barristan again. "Tell his grace I wish to speak with him." Barristan bowed. "I will convey the message." Cersei knew he would convey it in exactly the way that suited him, not her. She turned away, leading her children back down the gallery. Myrcella's hand was damp with nervous sweat. Tommen stumbled slightly, distracted. Joffrey muttered curses under his breath. Cersei's mind moved faster than their feet. Robert was in council. With whom?
Eddard Stark, certainly.
Perhaps Varys. Perhaps Pycelle. Perhaps... Gods curse him, Stannis. She felt a flash of rage at the thought of Stannis Baratheon returning. Cold as a winter sea, holding judgment in his eyes. He had always hated her. He had always suspected. If he had proof now... Cersei's breath tightened. At the next corridor she met Jaime Lannister, appearing from an archway like a golden ghost. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He fell into step beside her without speaking, because they had learned long ago how to talk without words in public. "Lockdown," Cersei murmured, lips barely moving. Barristan at the doors. Robert in council. Jaime's jaw tightened. "They've read something," he murmured. Cersei's gaze flicked to her children. "Joffrey," she said, voice sweet as honey. "Take Myrcella and Tommen to your chambers. The Hound will accompany you. Do not leave. Do you understand?" Joffrey bristled. "Why should I?" "Because I said so," Cersei snapped, and the harshness made Myrcella flinch. Joffrey's eyes narrowed, but he turned, stalking off with Sandor Clegane behind him. Myrcella and Tommen followed, glancing back with confused fear. When they were gone, Cersei's face hardened again. "We need to know what is in that council," she said. Jaime's eyes flicked toward the corridor that led to the small council chamber. "I can go," he said. "No," Cersei hissed. "Not you. They watch you." She glanced around, noting servants, guards, shadows. "We use someone else." "Littlefinger," Jaime suggested, disgust in his tone. Cersei's mouth twisted. Littlefinger sells secrets like fish in the market, she said. But he does not give them for free. Jaime's gaze went to her face, and for a moment his mask slipped. What if Robert knows? He asked quietly. What if he knows everything? Cersei felt a cold calm settle over her. Then we do what we should have done long ago, she said, and the words tasted like iron. We remove him. Jaime's eyes widened a fraction. Here? In the castle? With Barristan? With poison? Cersei said softly. With a fall. With a knife in the dark blamed on an angry man. Her eyes gleamed. Robert has made enemies everywhere. He has made a career of it. Jaime stared at her. And after? He asked. Cersei's gaze went toward where her children had gone. After, she said, voice steady, my son sits the throne, and if anyone calls him bastard, I drown them in their own blood. Ye. Me swallowed, his throat working. For once he looked less like the Kingslayer and more like a man who had always thought he could keep everything in his hands. Cersei leaned close, her voice barely a breath. We move first, she reminded him. We always move first. Somewhere behind closed doors, Robert Baratheon was listening to men speak of treason. Somewhere in the castle's veins, fear moved like poison. Cersei felt it and smiled, because she had been poisoned long before anyone named her so. The small council chamber smelled of wax and old arguments. Robert Baratheon sat at the head of the table, his crown placed before him rather than on his head, as if he could not bear its weight while thinking. His boar spear leaned against the wall like a reminder of simpler violence. His hands lay flat on the wood, heavy, scarred, trembling only slightly. Eddard Stark sat to his right, shoulder square, face set. Across from them Varys lounged in his silks, smile mild, eyes sharp. Peter Baelish leaned back in his chair as if the world were a joke told for his amusement. Grand Maester Pycelle sat hunched, sweating in spite of the chamber's chill, his hands shaking as he turned pages in the great book of lineages. And then the door opened. Stannis Baratheon entered like a storm given shape, hard, cold, and unwelcome. His jaw was clenched, his eyes flat as slate. He wore black and red, and there was salt on his boots as if the sea still clung to him. Behind him came two guards with the look of men who had learned not to flinch. Robert's gaze snapped to him, and for a moment something like relief flashed in the king's eyes. Relief that the truth had an ally, even one he disliked. Then the relief curdled into anger, because Robert could not look at Stannis without remembering every time the brother had judged him. Brother, Robert said, voice rough. Your grace, Stannis replied, and the lack of warmth was a blade. Robert grunted. Sit, he ordered, and Stannis sat, stiff as a corpse. Ned watched Stannis's face. There was no surprise in it, which meant Stannis had already suspected. Perhaps he had known for years and simply waited for proof sharp enough to cut through Robert's denial. Pycelle cleared his throat, a wet, nervous sound. Your Grace, he began. These matters of lineage are delicate. Spare me, Robert growled. Tell me what is true. Pycelle fumbled, then forced himself to speak. The Baratheon line has been consistent, he said, tapping the page with a trembling finger. Black hair, as Lord Eddard Stark said. The Queen's children. He hesitated, glancing at Varys as if seeking protection. They do not resemble your grace. Robert's lips curled. They resemble lions, he said, and the bitterness in his tone made the candle flame flicker. Stannis spoke, voice flat. Jon Arryn came to me, he said. He showed me the book. He spoke of his fears. He died before we could act. Robert's eyes flared. You never told me, he snarled. I tried, Stannis said, and the calmness of it was infuriating. You did not listen. You never listen when the truth displeases you. Robert half rose from his chair, fists clenching. Ned's hand touched his forearm, steadying him. Not stopping him, but reminding him that rage was a weapon best aimed. Robert sank back, breathing hard. And now, he demanded. What do we do now? Varys's voice came smooth. Now we proceed carefully, he said. The Queen has powerful friends. Lord Tywin Lannister is not a man who accepts insult easily. Peter Baelish chuckled softly. Insult, he said. This is more than insult. This is a knife to Lord Tywin Lannister's pride. He will bleed the realm to stop it. Robert glared. And you'd like that, wouldn't you? He snapped. Chaos makes ladders? Is that it? Peter Baelish's smile widened as if delighted. Your Grace remembers my little sayings, he purred. How flattering. Ned's voice cut in cold. We are not here for riddles, he said. We are here for treason. Stannis's gaze fixed on Ned. The lawful course is clear, he said. The Queen and Ser Jaime Lannister are arrested. The children are declared illegitimate. I am your heir. Robert's mouth twisted. You always did love the law, he muttered. The law is what keeps men from tearing each other apart, Stannis replied. Robert laughed. Harsh. Men tear each other apart anyway, he said. The law just gives them fancy words while they do it. Pycelle wiped sweat from his brow. Your Grace, he pleaded. Perhaps a private arrangement, an exile, a quiet. No, Robert said, and the word cracked like thunder. The king's eyes burned. No more quiet. No more whispers behind tapestries while my crown is made a fool. I want the truth dragged into the light. Ned's heart tightened, because light could blind as well as reveal. Then we must control the moment, he said. If we confront her openly without securing the castle, she will run. Or strike. Robert's fingers flexed. I will not be struck in my own hall, he growled. Varys's smile remained mild. Many kings have been, he said softly. Robert's gaze snapped to Varys. Then tell me how, he demanded. You see everything, eunuch. Tell me where she hides her knives. Varys inclined his head. The Queen's knives are not always steel, he said. They are men, coins, promises, fear. Peter Baelish tapped a finger on the table. And love, he added lightly, eyes flicking to Ned as if savoring a private joke. Robert's hand slammed down on the table. The sound made Pycelle jump. Enough, Robert roared. Here is what will happen. The chamber went still. Robert leaned forward, his face savage. We set a trap, he said. We summon the Queen to speak with me in private. We keep her away from her guards. We keep her away from her brother. His eyes cut to Barristan's absence. Then to Ned. You will be there, Ned. And Barristan Selmy. And Stannis. And men I trust. Stannis's expression did not change. You trust few, he said. I trust fewer now, Robert snarled. Ned's gaze sharpened. And the children? He asked carefully. Robert's gaze flicked away for a heartbeat, pain flashing. Then the pain froze into anger. They are to be confined, he said. Not harmed, confined. The words sounded like mercy and punishment together. If they are mine, I will know it. If they are not. His jaw clenched until his beard bristled. Then they are hostages to their mother's treason. Pycelle's mouth worked soundlessly, as if trying to form protest. Robert's gaze fixed on Stannis. If I die, he said abruptly, and the room chilled. You take the throne. Not Joffrey, not Tommen. You. The realm will have a lawful king, even if it hates him. Stannis's eyes flared, not with joy but with grim acceptance. As it should, he said. Peter Baelish smiled faintly, as if already counting opportunities. Varys's smile remained gentle, but his eyes were watchful. Ned's stomach tightened. We must act swiftly, he said, because delay would give Cersei time to move first. Robert stood, snatching his crown off the table and setting it on his head with a rough gesture, as if crowning himself again in defiance. Send for Cersei Lannister, he ordered. Now, and double the guard on every door. If a lion so much as coughs in my halls, I want to hear it. He turned toward the door, and for a moment Ned saw the Robert he had known in war, large, fierce, alive with purpose. But beneath that purpose was something broken, something that had trusted and been made a fool. As Robert reached the door, he paused, shoulders rising and falling with a heavy breath. Without turning, he spoke, voice lower. "Ned," he said. "Yes, your grace." Robert's hand gripped the doorframe. "If the wolves had not spoken," he said, and the words were rough, scraped out of him, "I would have died smiling like an idiot." Ned's throat tightened. "We will see this through," he said. Robert nodded once, then shoved the door open and strode out, leaving the council chamber filled with candle smoke and the scent of imminent blood. Behind him, the crown's shadow stretched long across the stone floor, like a spear pointed straight at the heart of the realm. Cersei Lannister did not hurry when the king summoned her. Hurrying was for servants and guilty men. She came at the pace of a queen in her own castle, her skirts whispering across stone, her chin lifted, her face arranged into calm. Every step through the Red Keep's corridors told her what the words of the summons did not. The guards were doubled, the doors watched, the servants tense as drawn bowstrings. She could feel eyes on her from behind tapestries and around corners, could smell fear on the air like damp wool. When she reached the chamber, she found the door guarded not by Lannister red but by white and by men with stags on their cloaks. Ser Barristan Selmy stood like a statue cut from honor itself, his mouth a flat line, his pale eyes steady. He bowed, but it was the bow of a man obeying a king, not flattering a queen. "Your Grace," he said. Cersei returned the bow with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Ser Barristan," she said softly. "So vigilant." "The king commands," he replied, and did not move aside until the guards behind him had opened the door. Cersei stepped inside and the room's air changed. It smelled of candle wax and old wood and anger restrained. Robert Baratheon stood behind a heavy table. His crown sat off to one side like a discarded gauntlet. His hands were planted on the wood, knuckles pale. Eddard Stark was beside him, quiet as winter, his eyes fixed on her as if she were a question he already knew the answer to. Stannis Baratheon sat at the table, rigid, expression carved from salt and judgment. Cersei's gaze flicked once to the open book, once to the broken gray wax seal, and she understood in an instant that this was no husband's tantrum. It was a blade set against her throat. "My husband," she said lightly, as if she had entered a feast. "You look like a man who has misplaced his wine." Robert's mouth moved, but no sound came at first. His eyes burned, not with the easy fury of his drunken rages, but with something colder, something that had been turning in him for years and had finally found a name. "Sit," he said at last. Cersei did not sit. She stepped forward instead, letting the candlelight catch the gold at her throat. "If you wish to speak with me, Robert, speak," she said. "But do not order me like a kennel bitch in front of your—" Her eyes slid to Eddard Stark and Stannis Baratheon with delicate contempt. "Counsel." Robert's hands clenched. The table creaked. "Bran Stark woke," he said. The name struck like a pebble tossed into still water, making ripples that reached far deeper than it should. Cersei kept her face smooth. "How unfortunate," she said. "For the boy, for his family." Eddard Stark's voice came quiet. "He remembers," he said. Cersei's gaze turned to him, and for a heartbeat the mask threatened to slip, not into fear but into hatred. "He is a child," she said. "Children remember nightmares and call them truth." Robert's fist slammed down so hard the candle flame jumped. "He remembers your brother pushing him," Robert snarled. "He remembers you in that tower with Jaime, rutting like—" "Enough," Cersei said sharply, the word cracking through the chamber like a whip. "Do you mean to disgrace yourself further?" Stannis Baratheon's eyes did not blink. "Disgrace comes from your treason," he said. Cersei's laugh was soft and incredulous. "Treason," she echoed. "Is that the word you've chosen, Stannis? You always did love ugly words when they suited you." Robert reached for the parchment with the broken direwolf seal and threw it across the table toward her. It skidded, stopping near her hand. "Read," he said. Cersei did not touch it. "I do not take lessons from wolves," she said. Eddard Stark's gaze did not waver. "Then take it from the book," he said, and his hand rested on the open pages like a judge's palm on law. Robert's voice dropped, thick with pain he could not bear to show. "Are they mine?" he asked, and it was the first honest question he had ever asked her in their marriage. For a heartbeat, Cersei saw the shape of a different answer. A softer one, a woman's mercy offered to a man who had never offered her any. She crushed it. Mercy was weakness. Weakness was death. "They are mine," she said. "They are the crowns. They are the realms." Robert's face twisted. "Not what I asked," he growled. Cersei stepped closer, lifting her chin. "What you asked is what you deserve," she said quietly. "You wanted heirs, Robert. You wanted the realm to bow and smile. You wanted a pretty queen at your side while you drank and hunted and shouted about a girl who died because you could not keep your hands to yourself. You wanted everything without paying for it. Well," her mouth curved, "you have it. Why ruin it now?" Robert's eyes went wild. He looked as though he might leap the table and wrap his hands around her throat. Barristan Selmy shifted at the door, and the scrape of his boot on stone was the only warning in the room. Eddard Stark spoke, and his voice was iron with restraint. "Because it is treason," he said. "Because the boy was nearly murdered to keep it hidden. Because Jon Arryn died chasing this truth. Because the realm cannot be built on a lie that bleeds children." Cersei looked at him, and for a moment her hatred softened into something like respect, because he meant it. Then she smiled again, sharp. "You speak of children," she said. "Do you mean yours, Lord Eddard? Are they safe, I wonder, in this castle full of knives?" Ned's face did not change, but his eyes hardened. Robert's voice came like a growl from deep in his chest. "Threaten him again," he said, "and I'll have your tongue." Cersei's eyes glittered. "You can try," she whispered. Robert straightened, and the motion was sudden, like a bear rising. "Ser Barristan," he said, voice raw but steady now. "Take the queen into custody. She remains in her chambers under guard. No messages, no visitors, no exceptions." Cersei's breath went still. For a heartbeat she saw the end of her power like a door closing. Then her pride flared, brighter than fear. "You cannot," she said. "I can," Robert said. "I am the king." Cersei turned her head slowly, letting her gaze rake the men in the room. Stannis with his cold certainty, Ned with his stubborn honor, Barristan with his unwavering blade. She found no softness, no crack to slide a word through. She smiled, because she would not give them the pleasure of seeing her flinch. "Then you had best pray your guards never sleep," she said softly, "because lions do not accept cages." Barristan Selmy stepped forward, and for the first time Cersei heard steel in his calm. "Your Grace," he said to her. "This way." Cersei walked with her head high, her skirts whispering, and behind her Robert Baratheon's breathing sounded like a storm trapped behind a wall. Jaime Lannister felt the shift in the castle like a change in weather. The Red Keep had always been full of whispers, but now the whispers carried weight. Doors were guarded that had never been guarded. Men looked at him too long, then away too fast. Even the stones seemed to watch him with suspicion. He came out of the White Sword Tower with his cloak draped over his shoulders like a second skin, his hand resting lightly on his sword as if it belonged there. It did. It always had. The Kingsguard were supposed to be the king's shield, but Jaime had worn the white like a disguise for years, hiding his own loyalties beneath it with a smile. He had not smiled since the summons. Cersei had been called to the king. That alone was not unusual. What was unusual was that she had not returned. What was unusual was that Robert Baratheon's men had appeared in pairs where once there had been one. What was unusual was that Jaime's path toward the Kingslayer had been quietly blocked by a polite young guard who had not been polite enough to meet his eyes. He took the corridor at a faster pace, long strides eating stone. He passed a tapestry of dragons, then one of lions, and the sight of his own house's symbol made his jaw tighten. He rounded the corner and found a line of Baratheon guards ahead, spears crossed, the stag on their cloaks as bold as a challenge. Jaime stopped. "Move," he said. The guard captain swallowed. "His Grace ordered." "I am the King's Guard," Jaime said, voice low. "His Grace orders me." The guard captain's spear did not lower. "His Grace ordered you not to enter." Jaime's fingers curled around his sword hilt. "Since when do kennel boys deny a white cloak?" he asked softly. "Since the king decided your cloak is not as white as you pretend." Something inside him answered, and the thought was a cold knife. Before he could speak again, footsteps came from the corridor behind the guards. Ser Barristan Selmy appeared, his white cloak immaculate, his expression grim. Beside him walked Cersei Lannister. Jaime's breath caught, not in love but in a flash of animal fury. Her face was composed, her chin lifted, but her eyes found him for a heartbeat, and in that heartbeat he saw the truth. She had been struck, not with a hand, but with law. She was being led, not escorted as queen, but taken as prisoner. Jaime stepped forward. The crossed spears lowered a fraction, uncertain. "Barristan," Jaime said, the name a warning. Ser Barristan did not slow. "Ser Jaime," he replied, voice calm. Jaime's gaze went to Cersei. "What is this?" he demanded. Cersei's lips curved, and the smile was cruel because it was the only weapon she could show in chains of courtesy. "Our husband has grown cautious," she said lightly. "He believes himself betrayed." Jaime's eyes snapped to Barristan. "You allow this?" "I obey the king," Barristan said, and the words sounded like a stone dropped into water. Heavy, final. Jaime stepped into their path. The guards shifted, spears tightening. Jaime did not look at them. "If you lay a hand on her," he said, his voice so low it barely carried, "I will kill you." Barristan's eyes remained steady. "Then you will die," he replied, as if discussing the weather. "And I will still obey the king." Jaime's hand tightened on his sword hilt until the leather creaked. For a heartbeat, the corridor held its breath. Jaime could draw. He could cut down the guards, cut down Barristan, seize Cersei, and run. The thought came fast, bright, intoxicating. But the Red Keep was full of men, and a running lion was still a lion in a cage of stone. Cersei brushed past him, close enough that her perfume and her rage filled his senses. "Do not be a fool," she murmured without moving her lips. "Not here." Jaime's eyes followed her as Barristan led her onward. The guards did not move aside for him, only for her passage. When she was gone down the corridor, the spears crossed again, blocking Jaime as if he were no longer a brother of the queen but a threat. Jaime stood very still. The corridor's torchlight flickered across his face, turning his gold hair into fire. The heat in him did not fade. It hardened. He looked at the guard captain. "Who gave the order?" he asked, and his voice was the edge of a blade. The captain hesitated. "The king," he said, and then quieter, "and Lord Eddard Stark." Jaime's mouth twisted. "Eddard Stark." The wolf's honor, the wolf's law. Jaime's hands flexed, as if itching to close around a throat. He turned away sharply before he did something stupid. He strode back toward the White Sword Tower, cloak snapping behind him like a banner of surrender. Inside, he found Ser Meryn Trant and Ser Boros Blunt at dice, their laughter loud and empty, their faces sobered at the sight of him. Ser Aerys Oakheart looked up from polishing his sword, unease in his eyes. Ser Preston Greenfield shifted uncomfortably, as if sensing the storm coming. Jaime did not bother with pleasantries. "The queen has been taken," he said. The words hit the room like a hammer.
Dice Clattered.
Silence swallowed laughter. Ser Meryn blinked. "Taken?" he echoed stupidly. "By the king," Jaime said, and his smile was a cut. "By the hand. By Barristan."
Ser Boros War.
Ser Aerys's brows drew together. "Why?" Jaime's eyes went distant, into the heart of the secret that had kept him alive and damned him all at once. Because a crippled boy in the north opened his mouth, he said softly. And because Robert Baratheon finally listened.
Ser Merins Chieftain.
What does the king want of us? Jaime's gaze snapped back, sharp. He wants our oaths, he said, and I have never been more tired of oaths. He turned on his heel and walked out, leaving the white cloaks behind him like ghosts, and the corridor outside seemed suddenly narrower, as if the castle were tightening its grip. Jaime Lannister did not pray. He did not plead. He did what lions did when cornered. He began to plan how to break King's hands. Ned Stark's chambers felt smaller than they had yesterday. The walls pressed in, not with stone but with consequence. He stood at the window a moment, watching King's Landing smoke curl into a pale sky, and thought of Winterfell's clean air and the way snow muffled sound. Here nothing was muffled. Every secret echoed. When the knock came, he did not call for wine or paper. He called for his daughters. Sansa arrived first, hair brushed smooth, her gown chosen carefully as if she might still be seen by princes. She looked anxious but hopeful, and that hope cut Ned like a knife. Arya came behind her, braids uneven, cheeks flushed from running or fighting or simply being alive. Needle hung at her hip beneath her tunic, hidden poorly because Arya had never been good at pretending to be what she was not. Septa Mordane followed them, mouth tight with disapproval and fear. "My lord," she began. "The girls. Leave us," Ned said, and the Septa blinked as if shocked that a father would dismiss her. But she bowed stiffly and withdrew, though she hovered near the door like a worried hen. When she was gone, Ned turned to his daughters and felt a heaviness settle over him. He had faced war and betrayal and death, but speaking to children as if they were grown was its own cruelty. "Sansa," he said gently. She smiled, bright and eager. "Father, is it true? Is the king angry with Queen Cersei Lannister?" Joffrey Baratheon said. She stopped, realizing his face was too stern for gossip. "Father." Ned knelt so he was level with her, hands resting on her shoulders. "Listen to me," he said softly. "You and Arya are going to leave King's Landing." Sansa's smile faltered. "Leave?" she whispered. "But my betrothal is nothing," Ned said, and the sharpness in his voice startled her. He forced it softer. "It is nothing compared to your safety." Arya's eyes lit with fierce relief. "Good," she said at once. "I hate it here." Sansa's breath caught as if struck. "You can't," she said, voice trembling. "You promised. You promised I could marry Joffrey Baratheon. You promised I would be a queen." Ned's throat tightened. He thought of the broken raven, the snapped feather. He thought of Bran Stark's pale face, of Catelyn Stark's iron voice. He thought of Robert Baratheon's eyes when he asked, "Are they mine?" And the way pain had turned into rage. "There are promises a man makes," Ned said quietly, "and promises a man breaks to keep his children alive." Sansa shook her head, tears already brightening her eyes. "But Joffrey Baratheon, he's kind," she said, and the lie was desperate enough that Ned wanted to weep for her innocence. Arya made a sound of disgust. "He's not kind," she snapped. "He's a—"
Arya, Ned warned gently.
Arya bit her tongue, but her glare remained. Sansa's voice cracked. "What happened?" she whispered. "What are you not telling me?" Ned took a breath. He could not give her all of it. Not yet. Not with the walls listening and the danger sea. Lose enough to breathe down their necks. "The king has learned something," he said. "Something that has made the court dangerous." Sansa's hands clenched in her skirt. "Is it about Joffrey Baratheon?" she asked, suddenly afraid in a way she had never been before. Ned hesitated, then chose truth in a shape she could bear. "It is about the queen," he said, "and about her family. I cannot explain more now. Only trust me." Sansa stared at him, and in her eyes Ned saw the child she had been in Winterfell, running through snow, laughing. Then he saw the girl she had become here, starved for songs and crowns. The two fought behind her gaze. "I don't want to go," she whispered. Ned's hands tightened on her shoulders, not to hurt but to hold her steady. "You will," he said, and the firmness left no room for pleading. "You will leave tonight. You will take ship with a trusted escort. You will return to Winterfell, to your mother." Arya's mouth curved, fierce satisfaction. "Can I bring Syrio Farrell?" she asked at once. Ned almost smiled despite himself. "No," he said, "but you will bring Needle and you will bring your wits. Keep them sharp." Sansa's tears spilled now, streaking her cheeks. "Father, please," she begged. "If I go, Joffrey Baratheon will hate me." Ned's heart clenched. "Let him," he said softly, because hatred was safer than love when love belonged to monsters. A shout echoed somewhere in the corridor outside, followed by hurried footsteps. Arya's head snapped toward the door. Instincts pricked. Ned rose, listening. The castle's tension had a sound now, like a rope pulled too tight. Ned moved to the chest and began to pack with quick, practiced hands. Cloaks, simple dresses, a bit of coin. He looked at Sansa, who stood frozen, trembling. "Sansa," he said, voice gentle but iron. "Help your sister. Help yourself. We have little time." Sansa wiped her face with shaking fingers and nodded, because she loved her father even when she did not understand him. Arya grabbed a cloak and tossed it onto the bed, moving with the briskness of a child who had always known danger came fast. Ned watched them both and felt the weight of the realm on his shoulders, but the weight of his daughters was heavier. He would not lose them to the lion's jaws. The chambers they gave Cersei were her own, and that was the first insult. Robert had not thrown her into a cell. He had not dragged her through the halls. He had not made a spectacle yet. He had simply tightened the leash and called it mercy, as if mercy could tame a lioness. 2 Baratheon men stood at her door with spears, their faces blank with the obedience of hired steel. Another guard waited in the antechamber. The servants who came and went did so under watchful eyes, carrying trays of bread and water as if feeding a prisoner rather than a queen. Cersei sat by the fire and did not eat. She stared into the flames as if she could see Robert's face burning there. Her hands were still, but her mind moved like a wolf in a trap, circling, searching for weakness. When the handmaid entered with the tray, the girl's hands shook so badly the cups rattled. She was young, freckles scattered across her nose, eyes wide with fear. She would have been easy to break if Cersei had needed to break her. Cersei did not. She needed her to carry something more delicate than obedience. "Leave it," Cersei said softly. The handmaid set the tray on the table and backed away a half step, glancing at the guards. Their spears did not move. Cersei lifted her gaze to the girl. "What is your name?" she asked. The girl swallowed. "Mina, your grace," she whispered. Cersei's smile was small and cold. "Mina," she repeated as if tasting the name. "Do you have family in the city?" The girl blinked, startled. "Yes, your grace. A brother. He works by the river." Cersei leaned back in her chair, letting the firelight paint gold across her cheekbones. "If the king's men found your brother," she said softly, "what do you think they would do to him?" The girl's face went white. Cersei watched it happen without pity. Pity was for those who had never been cornered. "Nothing," Cersei continued, as if speaking of weather. "If you are wise. If you do a small thing for me." The girl's breath came fast. I can't," she whispered, eyes flicking to the guards. Cersei's smile did not falter. "You can," she said. "You will, because you love your brother." Her eyes sharpened. "Do you think Lord Eddard Stark loves his daughters any less? Do you think Robert Baratheon loves anyone at all? The realm is full of men who pretend love makes them noble, Mina. Love makes them weak." She leaned forward, voice dropping. "But it can make you strong, if you use it." The girl's eyes brimmed with tears. Cersei slid a ring off her finger. Gold, heavy, lion carved into it. She held it out between 2 fingers. "Take this," she murmured, and her tone became almost kind. "Go to Grand Maester Pycelle. Tell him the queen asks for his comfort. Tell him the queen is frightened." She let a soft laugh touch the words. He likes frightened women. It makes him feel powerful.
Mina hesitated. Trembling.
Cersei's gaze went to the guards at the door. I am a prisoner, she said loudly enough for them to hear. But I am still the queen. Would you deny me a maester? One guard shifted uncomfortably. The other kept his eyes forward. Cersei turned back to Mina, quieter. When Pycelle comes, you will ensure he brings something stronger than water, she whispered. A draft to soothe nerves. A draft that can travel further than this room. The girl shook her head, horrified. You mean? I mean nothing, Cersei said smoothly, and her smile sharpened. You are a handmaid. You carry messages. You do not understand what the great speak of. You will only repeat what I tell you. She pressed the ring into Mina's palm, closing the girl's fingers around it. And if you do, your brother will live. If you do not... Cersei let the threat hang unfinished because unfinished threats were often the most effective. Mina's lips trembled. She nodded once, quick and desperate. Cersei leaned back, satisfied, and watched the girl slip out under the guard's eyes, a trembling sparrow carrying a lion's claw. When Mina was gone, Cersei rose and moved to the window. The city sprawled below, endless roofs and smoke and noise. Somewhere in that chaos were men who still belonged to her, gold cloaks bought with coin, servants bought with fear, lords bought with promises. Somewhere, Jaime Lannister was moving like a blade in the dark. Cersei placed a hand against the glass, as if she could press her will through stone and air. You should have killed him when you had the chance, she whispered to the flame reflected in the window. Meaning Bran Stark, meaning the boy who had opened his mouth and broken her world. Then she smiled again, slow. No, she corrected softly. Let him live. Let him watch what truth costs. Robert Baratheon did not sit the Iron Throne while he planned to break a lion. He paced in the antechamber instead, boots thudding on stone, hands clenching and unclenching as if searching for a throat. Stannis Baratheon stood at the table like an anchor, unmoving, eyes fixed on the map spread before them. Eddard Stark remained by the door, listening for footsteps, for whispers, for the sound of betrayal moving closer. Petyr Baelish lounged near a pillar, as if invited to a play, his smile faint. Varys hovered like a pleasant shadow, hands folded, eyes soft and watchful. Robert jabbed a thick finger at the map. The gold cloaks, he growled. If Janos Slynt is bought, we're dead in our own castle. Stannis's voice was flat. He is bought, he said. The question is by whom, and whether he can be bought again. Robert's eyes flashed. I'm not bribing my own watch, he snarled. You already have, Petyr Baelish said lightly. Just not with coins, with the illusion of power. His eyes glittered. Men like Janos Slynt do not want to be loyal. They want to be safe. Robert glared. You're too cheerful for a man standing this close to execution, he said. Petyr Baelish's smile widened. Execution is the realm's favorite hobby, he murmured. I'd hate to deprive it. Ned's voice cut in cold. Enough, he said. We arrest Jaime Lannister tonight, quietly, before he gathers men. Robert's jaw clenched. Jaime, he spat, and the name tasted like bile. I want to cut his hands off. Stannis's eyes did not blink. Arrest him, he said. Try him. Sentence him. Do it with law. A king who slaughters in rage looks like a tyrant. Robert's laugh was harsh. And a king who lets a man cuckold him looks like a fool, he snapped. Stannis did not flinch. A king who survives looks like a king, he replied. Varys spoke softly, as if offering comfort. Ser Jaime Lannister will not submit easily, he said. He is proud. He is dangerous. He has friends among the guards. He has a white cloak, Robert said, voice thick with contempt. That cloak has covered too much. Ned's gaze sharpened. We do it with Barristan Selmy, he said, and with men we trust. Stark men. Baratheon men. Not gold cloaks unless we must. Petyr Baelish's eyes flicked to Ned, amused. Trust is a sweet thing, he said. It's also rare here, almost a delicacy. Ned ignored him. The queen is contained, he continued. The children are contained. If we take Jaime, we take their last sharp edge. Robert's breathing came heavy. He paced again, then stopped abruptly, turning toward Varys. Where is the boy? He demanded. The smith's apprentice, the one you told Jon Arryn about. Varys' smile remained gentle. Gendry, he said. He is in the city, at the armorer's. Bring him, Robert ordered at once. If I'm naming heirs, I'll look at my own blood and know it. Stannis' mouth tightened. Legitimizing bastards invites chaos, he said. Robert's eyes flashed. Chaos is already here. He snapped. At least my bastards are mine. Ned's heart tightened. Robert's pain was a fire that could burn the realm if not shaped. We need the city watch, Ned said again. Even if we do not trust them. We need them to keep the streets from exploding when the news breaks. Peter Baelish tilted his head. I can speak with Janos Slynt, he offered. He likes to feel important. Robert glared. And you like to sell importance, he growled. What do you want for it? Peter Baelish's smile was all innocence. Nothing, he said. Only the continued privilege of breathing. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Do not bargain with snakes, he said to Robert. Kill them. Peter Baelish's smile did not fade. If you kill every snake, your grace, he said sweetly to Stannis. You'll have no one left to blame when the mice eat your grain. Robert made a sound that was half a snarl, half a laugh, and slammed a hand down on the map. Enough talk, he said. Barristan takes Jaime. Ned, you keep your men ready. Stannis, you stay close. If the lions roar, I want my claws in their throats before they can bite.
Ned nodded.
Stannis nodded. Varys bowed slightly. Peter Baelish smiled as if he had been given a gift. Above them, the Iron Throne loomed beyond the archway, its spikes catching sunlight like teeth. It waited, patient, for the blood that always came. Jaime Lannister did not storm toward Robert's door like a fool, not after seeing spears crossed for him in a corridor that had once opened at his approach. Rage wanted spectacle. Survival wanted patience. He took the stairwells instead, the narrow passages that wound through the red keep's bones, where torches smoked and stone sweated cold. In places like this, a man could be seen by fewer eyes, and fewer eyes meant fewer witnesses. He found Lannister men posted where they still dared. Red cloaks at intersections, guards who wore the lion with stubborn pride. He stopped one of their captains in a shadowed stairwell, away from listening ears. The captain's face was hard, but his eyes held the edge of fear that came when a king turned his teeth on you. Sir Jaime? The captain murmured, glancing up and down the stair. They're locking doors. They're moving men. They've taken my sister, Jaime said simply. The captain's throat bobbed. The queen. Jaime's mouth twisted. Aye. And if they can take her, they can take any of us. He stepped closer, voice low. How many men can you gather in an hour without drawing notice? The captain hesitated. 30, he said. Perhaps 40, if we pull from. Not in the open, Jaime snapped. Not in a line like a parade. Quiet, spread, knives in belts, hands on hilts. He looked at the man's face. Do you understand? The captain nodded, swallowing. Yes, sir. Jaime reached into his cloak and brought out a small pouch that clinked softly. He pressed it into the captain's hand. For loyalty, he said, and his tone made it clear that loyalty was not optional. The captain's fingers closed around the coin as if it were a lifeline. What do we do? He asked, voice tight. Jaime's eyes narrowed. We wait for the moment, he said, and when it comes, we move. The captain's gaze flicked toward the upper corridors. They say the hand is with the king, he whispered. They say Stannis Baratheon is here. Jaime's jaw tightened. Let Stannis pray to his laws, he said. Steel is still steel. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Find out where they're holding Cersei. Find out how many men are at her door. Find out which guards can be bought, and which can be frightened. And if you see Peter Baelish, Jaime's smile turned sharp. Offer him coin. If he refuses, offer him fear. The captain's face tightened. And the gold cloaks? He asked. Jaime's eyes went distant for a heartbeat, calculating. Janos Slint will go where the wind blows hardest, he said. Make sure our wind is strong. He left the captain then and continued down the stairwell, moving like a man who knew every stone. The Red Keep had been his home longer than his father's halls had been. He knew where the walls hid secret doors and where the servants listened. He knew where to strike to make chaos bloom. At the bottom of the stair, he paused, listening. Footsteps echoed somewhere above, more than a few armored, purposeful. Men moving, Barristan. He thought, or Stark guards, or both. Jaime's hand rested on his sword hilt, not drawing yet, but ready. He could feel the castle tightening around him, the way a net tightened around a fish. He had cut his way out of nets before. He moved again, not upward toward the king, but sideways toward the places where men with no oaths waited, stables, kitchens, the barracks of the city watch, places where coin spoke louder than crowns. If Robert Baratheon wanted to drag the truth into the light, Jaime Lannister would drown the light in darkness first. Ser Barristan Selmy did not relish the task, but he did not avoid it. That was the difference between men who wore honor and men who merely spoke its name. He moved through the Red Keep with measured steps, white cloak falling straight from his shoulders like a shroud. Behind him came 4 Kingsguard, Aerys Oakhart among them, pale and tense, along with Baratheon men whose spears and wary eyes marked them as soldiers rather than knights. They walked as if through a battlefield because a battlefield was what the castle had become. They found Jaime Lannister in a corridor where the light was uneven and the walls were close. He stood beneath a tapestry of a lion, its threadbare mane fluttering slightly in a draught, and he held his sword already drawn. The blade caught torchlight and gave it back in hard gleams. Jaime's face was calm, but it was the calm of a man poised to strike. Ser Barristan stopped 10 paces away. "Ser Jaime," he called, voice steady. "By order of King Robert Baratheon, you are to lay down your sword and come with us." Jaime's smile was a thin cut. "For what crime?" he asked, as if amused. "Treason," Ser Barristan said, and the word fell like a stone. Jaime's eyes flashed. "Ah," he said softly. "The wolf has taught the stag new words." One of the Baratheon guards shifted, gripping his spear tighter. Ser Barristan kept his gaze on Jaime. "Do not make this worse," he said. Jaime's laugh was quiet. "Worse?" he echoed. "You come with spears to take me, Barristan. You think there's a softer version of this?"
Se Barristans jau tictanat.
He had fought in wars, had stood in melees and duels, had faced death in 100 forms. Facing Jaime Lannister was different. Not because Jaime was a better swordsman, though he might be, but because Jaime's presence carried the stench of a broken oath. It was like standing near rot. "Lay down your sword," Ser Barristan repeated. "You are still a knight. You can still." "Still what?" Jaime snapped, and the sudden sharpness in his voice cut through the corridor. "Still pretend the world is a song? Still pretend oaths mean anything when kings are fools and queens are caged?" His eyes burned. "You obey Robert now because he finally says what you like to hear. Where was your obedience when he drank himself stupid? Where was your honor when he hit her? Where was your white cloak then?" Ser Barristan's eyes hardened. "I have done what I could," he said quietly. "I have served the crown." "You've served the chair," Jaime said, voice dripping contempt. "Not the man, not the realm. A chair made of swords that cuts anyone foolish enough to sit it." Ser Barristan took a slow breath. "Last chance," he said. Jaime's gaze flicked to the Kingsguard behind Barristan. Aerys Oakhart looked sick, torn between loyalty and fear. Boros Blunt's face was blank. Meryn Trant's mouth tightened. Jaime's eyes lingered on them as if measuring which would die first. Then Jaime looked back at Barristan and some tea. Ing in his expression settled into certainty. "No," he said. He moved. The corridor erupted into steel. Jaime's sword flashed in a tight arc, fast enough that torchlight seemed to stutter. Ser Barristan met it with his own blade, the impact ringing like a bell. The sound echoed down stone halls, loud as alarm. The Baratheon guards surged, spears thrusting, but Jaime slid sideways, using the narrow corridor like a weapon. He struck at spears' hafts, knocking them aside, stepping inside their reach. A man cried out as Jaime's blade bit through leather and drew blood along an arm. Another stumbled back, face pale. Ser Barristan pressed forward, each movement precise, economical. He did not waste motion. He did not waste breath. His blade met Jaime's again and again, turning aside cuts that would have killed younger men. Their swords sang in the torchlit air, a harsh music that made the corridor feel like the inside of a bell. Jaime's face was fierce now, lips parted, breath controlled. He fought like a man who had never believed he could lose. Ser Barristan fought like a man who had already accepted loss as part of duty.
Stilrang.
Boots scraped. A spear clattered to the floor. Blood spotted stone. Stop! Ser Barristan commanded between blows, not pleading, not angry, simply ordering, as if Jaime were a stubborn horse. Yield! Jaime answered with a slash aimed at Ser Barristan's throat. Ser Barristan parried, stepped in, and struck with the flat of his blade at Jaime's wrist. Jaime hissed, grip shifting. He recovered instantly, but the moment had told Ser Barristan what he needed to know. Jaime could be hurt. Jaime could be forced. Behind Barristan, more footsteps thundered. Reinforcements coming, the castle waking fully to violence. Jaime's eyes flicked past Barristan's shoulder, calculating escape. Ser Barristan saw it too. Hold the corridor, he barked to the guards. Do not let him slip. Jaime's smile flashed, bright and ugly. Try, he whispered. And then the Kingslayer and the old knight collided again. Honor and treason locked blade to blade in a narrow hall that could barely contain the realms breaking. The sound of steel did not stay confined. It spread through the red keep like fire through dry straw. Ned Stark heard it first as distant ringing, then as shouts, then as the unmistakable thunder of boots running down corridors. The castle's tension snapped. The air filled with the sharp smell of fear. He had just fastened Arya's cloak when the first scream echoed, high and ragged, followed by a barked command that carried down stone halls. Sansa froze mid-step, her hands trembling as she tried to fold a dress into a chest. Septa Mordain crossed herself, whispering prayers under her breath. Ned drew his sword. "Stay behind me," he ordered, and the tone left no room for argument. Arya's eyes went bright, not with fear but with fierce readiness. Her hand went to needle at once. Sansa's face went white. "Father," she whispered, voice shaking. "What is happening?" "Nothing you need to understand," Ned said softly. "Only obey." The door burst open without courtesy. Jory Castle stumbled in, breathless, his face grim. "My lord," he panted. "Lannister men are moving. There's fighting near the White Sword Tower. Barristan's trying to take Jaime." Ned's jaw tightened. "Where are the Queen's guards?" he demanded. "Everywhere," Jory said, and the word was heavy. "They're trying to reach her chambers." Ned's heart clenched. If Cersei's men reached her, the Queen would not remain a cage. She would become a knife again. "Get the girls out," Ned said at once. "Now, to the docks. Find the captain we hired. Put them on the ship and shove off." "No dilas." Jory's gaze flicked to Sansa and Arya. "Aye, my lord." Sansa stepped forward, tears shining. "Father, please." Ned cut her off gently. Firm. "Go," he said. "This is not a song." Before she could answer, another shout echoed close. Too close. Footsteps pounded outside the chamber. Ned moved to the doorway, sword lifted. The corridor beyond was chaos. Servants pressed against walls, eyes wide. Men ran with weapons drawn. A Baratheon spearman slammed into a Lannister guard, and the clash of bodies echoed. Torches flickered as if the fire itself were startled. Ned saw red cloaks surging from the far end of the corridor. Lannister men, faces hard, swords out. Their captain barked an order and they advanced as a pack. Jory cursed and shoved the girls behind him. "Back!" he snapped at the Lannister men. "In the king's name." The Lannister captain laughed. "The king's name changes by the hour," he snarled. "Move, Stark." Ned stepped into the corridor, sword pointed. "You will not pass," he said. The Lannister captain's eyes flicked over Ned's face, contempt and calculation warring. "Lord Eddard Stark," he said. "How noble, how stupid." He lunged. Ned met him, steel ringing. The corridor was too narrow for elegant fighting. It became brutish, close, breath and sweat and the scrape of boots on stone. Ned's blade drove the captain back a step. Another Lannister guard tried to slip around and Jory slam. Ed into him, knocking him into the wall with a crash. Arya's breath came fast behind Ned. He could feel her presence like heat. "Do not," he warned without turning. "Do not come forward. I can help," Arya whispered fiercely. "You can live," Ned snapped, and the harshness was born of love and fear. Sansa made a small sob. Septa Mordain clutched her arm and tried to pull her back deeper into the chamber. "My lady," she pleaded. "Please." The fight surged. A Baratheon spearman thrust, catching a Lannister man in the thigh. The man screamed and fell, blood spreading dark on stone. Another red cloak shoved forward, eyes wild, and Ned's sword met his, turning aside a cut meant for Ned's shoulder. Ned shoved him back, then struck, the blade biting into leather. The man staggered, clutching his side. "Fall back," Jory shouted to the girls. "Go now." Arya hesitated, eyes blazing, then grabbed Sansa's hand with sudden force. "Move," she hissed, dragging her sister toward the inner passage. Sansa stumbled, crying, looking back over her shoulder at Ned as if afraid it was the last time she would see him. It might be, Ned thought grimly, and the thought nearly broke his focus. He shoved it away and drove forward again, because if he faltered, they would die here, in a corridor full of screaming men and spilled blood. The Red Keep was no longer a palace. It was a battleground. And in the center of it, Ned Stark held a line with his own body while the realm tore itself apart around him. By the time Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne, the Red Keep smelled of sweat and smoke and fear. Word had flown faster than ravens through the castle. The Queen was contained, Jaime Lannister had fought the Kingsguard, blood had been spilled in halls where only whispers were supposed to live. Servants huddled in corners. Courtiers gathered like moths drawn to flame, unable to resist the spectacle of power cracking. Robert climbed the steps to the throne with a heavy, deliberate stride. Each step made the swords beneath him gleam, catching torchlight like teeth. He sat, and the Iron Throne took him in its cruel embrace. His crown sat on his head like a challenge. His face was thunder-given flesh. Below him stood Eddard Stark, sword in hand, the blade still marked with dark smears from the corridor fight. Stannis Baratheon stood at Robert's side, rigid, his presence a cold shadow. Ser Barristan Selmy stood one step down, breathing hard, his white cloak streaked with dust and a hint of blood. Between Barristan and two guards knelt Jaime Lannister, disarmed at last, wrist raw where steel had struck. His face was pale with rage, his smile gone entirely. And at the foot of the throne stood Cersei Lannister, guarded by men with stags on their cloaks. Her chin was lifted, her eyes green fire. She looked not like a prisoner, but like a queen deciding whether captivity was worth the trouble. Robert's voice rolled across the hall like a war drum. "Hear me," he roared. The murmurs died. Even the banners seemed to still. Robert's gaze swept the gathered lords and ladies. Men who had laughed at feasts, women who had smiled behind fans, all of them now hungry for truth and terrified of it. "There has been treason in my house," Robert said, and the words landed heavy as stones. "Treason in my bed." A ripple went through the hall, sharp inhales, the rustle of silk. Cersei did not blink. Robert pointed a thick finger toward Jaime. "This man," he said, voice thick with contempt, has broken sacred vows. He has defiled the crown. He has raised his hand against my blood. Jaime's mouth twisted. Your blood? He spat, and the contempt in his tone made several courtiers flinch. Robert's face contorted. For a moment he looked like he might leap down and tear Jaime apart with his bare hands. Stannis' hand touched Robert's forearm briefly, a restraint offered without softness. Robert drew a harsh breath and continued, forcing his fury into words that could be written and remembered. By the testimony of Bran Stark, he said, and the name rang like a bell. And by the evidence of lineage long recorded, I declare that Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are not of my seed. The hall exploded into whispers, shocked and frantic. A woman gasped aloud, then clapped a hand over her mouth. A lord muttered a prayer. Somewhere, someone began to laugh in disbelief and stopped when Robert's eyes cut toward him. Cersei's smile was slow, venomous. So, she said softly, Voic, carrying despite her quiet. You choose to disgrace yourself publicly. How bold. Robert leaned forward on the throne. I choose truth, he growled. And I choose law. His gaze snapped to the gathered court. By the laws of Westeros, Queen Cersei Lannister is charged with treason, high treason, against the crown. Sir Jaime Lannister is charged with treason and with breaking his vows as Kingsguard. They will stand trial. Cersei laughed softly. Trial, she echoed, as if amused by the word. With which judges? Your drunken friends? Your northern wolf? Your bitter brother? Stannis' voice cut like ice. With the realm, he said. Robert's gaze sharpened, and his voice rose again. Stannis Baratheon is my lawful heir, he declared, and the words struck the hall like a thrown gauntlet. If I die, the crown passes to him, not to bastards born of treason. Stannis' expression did not change, but the courts did. Some faces tightened with fear, some with disgust, some with calculation. Peter Baelish stood among them, smiling faintly, eyes bright with interest, as if watching a game where the board had been overturned. Varys stood as well, hands folded, his face mournful, as if grieving for the realm while quietly counting the ways it could be saved or ruined. Robert's eyes moved again, sweeping the hall like a blade. Lord Tywin Lannister is commanded to present himself to the crown, he roared. He will answer for his house's treason. And if he refuses, Robert's grin was savage. Then I will march west and burn the lion out of his den. The word burn made the hall go colder. Robert Baratheon had never been subtle, but now he was something worse than subtle. He was certain. Cersei's gaze held his, and for a heartbeat the hall seemed to shrink to the space between them. If you march, she said softly, the realm will bleed. It will bleed until it forgets your name. Robert leaned forward, voice low enough that only those closest might hear, but his hatred made it carry anyway. Then it will bleed remembering you, he said. Ser Barristan shifted, tightening his grip on Jaime's arm. Jaime's eyes flashed, wild and furious, but he did not move. Not now. Not with steel at his throat and the room full of witnesses. Robert sat back on the iron throne, shoulders heavy. The anger in him did not fade, but beneath it there was something like grief, vast and silent. For all his shouting, for all his threats, he looked for a moment like a man watching his own life collapse. Then he lifted his chin again, king once more. This court is dismissed, he thundered, and any man who calls my judgment false will answer to me. The iron throne's spikes caught torchlight, and the hall emptied in a rush of silk and fear, leaving behind only the accused, the accusers, and the bitter taste of truth spoken aloud. Casterly Rock did not tremble when war came. It had been carved into stone too long for that. But men could tremble inside stone, and on the day the Raven arrived, even the rock's halls seemed to tighten. Tywin Lannister stood over a table strewn with maps, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture perfect as if he had been shaped by the same chisel that shaped the mountain's walls. The light from tall windows fell across the table, catching the golden lion weights that held parchment flat. Kevan Lannister stood beside him, silent, grim, waiting. The raven perched on its stand like a judge. The seal on the message had been broken, the wax stamped with the stag. Tywin read without expression. His eyes moved over the words, and if the letter carried insult, threat, command, none of it touched his face. When he reached the end, he folded it slowly, as if the act of folding could contain the realm's breaking. Kevan cleared his throat. "Well?" he asked quietly. Tywin's gaze lifted. It was cold, and it did not waver. "Robert Baratheon has finally remembered he is a king," Tywin said. Kevan's mouth tightened. "He has named Stannis Baratheon heir," he said. "He claims the children. He claims what he must," Tywin said, voice flat. His hand went to the map, fingers resting on the borders of the Westerlands. "He has taken Cersei Lannister," he continued, and the name was not spoken with affection but with ownership. "He has taken Jaime Lannister." Kevan's eyes hardened. "He will try them." Tywin's lips pressed into a thin line. "He will try to," he corrected. Kevan hesitated. "Do we go to court?" he asked, and though the question sounded dutiful, it carried the weight of knowing the answer. Tywin's gaze did not blink. "To kneel and be mocked?" he said softly. "To watch my daughter paraded as traitor, my son as oathbreaker, my grandchildren as bastards?" His voice remained calm, which was more frightening than fury. "No." He moved a lion weight on the map, sliding it from the rock toward the riverlands as if moving a piece on a board. "We call the banners," Tywin said. "We gather every sword that bears our name. We take the field before Robert Baratheon can bring his stag to our gates." Kevan's jaw clenched. "And the hostages?" he asked, because that was what Cersei and Jaime had become. Tywin's eyes went distant, calculating. "Hostages can be retrieved," he said, "or exchanged." His gaze sharpened again. "Or avenged." Kevan swallowed. "This will be war," he said. Tywin's mouth curved, not into a smile, but into the faintest expression of certainty. "This is already war," he replied. "The only question is who bleeds first." He turned toward the door. "Send riders," he ordered. "To the crag, to Ashmark, to every lord who owes us. Tell them the lion is called. And send word to the city watch in King's Landing quietly. Remind them where gold comes from." Kevan nodded once and moved to obey, his steps heavy. Tywin Lannister looked at T. He raven again, then at the broken seal, and something like contempt flickered in his eyes. "A king thinks law is stronger than stone," he murmured. "We will teach him the weight of rock." Far away, in Winterfell, another raven arrived, wings dusted with frost. It came down in the rookery with a tired flutter and was carried at once to Catelyn Stark. Catelyn read the king's words in the great hall beneath direwolf banners. Robb Stark stood beside her, rigid, his face tight with restrained fury and fierce relief. Maester Luwin hovered close, eyes scanning lines as if searching for traps even in ink. The guards along the walls listened without pretending not to. Bran Stark sat near the hearth on a litter, wrapped in furs, Summer's great head resting across his lap. Bran's fingers sank into the wolf's fur with slow, careful effort. He felt the warmth of the fire, the cold seeping through stone, the heavy presence of his mother's fear turned into resolve. Catelyn lifted her gaze from the parchment. "The king believes us," she said, and her voice sounded like a bowstring pulled taut. Robb's breath came hard. "He's arrested them," he said. "He's named Stannis Baratheon heir." His eyes flashed. "He's called Tywin Lannister to court." Maester Luwin's mouth tightened. "Tywin Lannister will not come," he said quietly. "Not to bend." Catelyn's grip on the letter tightened. "Then he will come with swords," she said. Bran stared into the fire and felt the whisper rise again, stronger now, as if the trees themselves leaned closer. In the flames he saw fields under gray skies, banners snapping, men falling. He saw a stag trampling through mud. He saw a lion's roar turned into steel. He saw black wings carrying messages faster than horses could run, and each message was a spark thrown into dry grass. Robb turned to the hall's guards, his voice suddenly older. "Send ravens," he ordered, "to our bannermen. Tell them the king has moved, and the lions will answer with war. The north will not be caught asleep." Catelyn reached out and touched Robb's arm, and for a moment mother and son held each other steady in the center of the storm. Bran stroked Summer's fur and felt the wolf's calm, fierce presence. He had spoken truth. Now he watched the world pay for it. Outside, snow fell softly on Winterfell's walls. Inside, the fire crackled. And far to the south, where stone smelled of salt and blood, the realm began to march.